We really want to hammer into everybody as even an entry point to education. They're just very easy, basic things to remember, not forwarding emails with attachments, hovering your cursor. I do that for people that I know who the emails are coming from because it's that easy to clone or send something that looks like it's relevant. I was getting some from my boss last year, and I walked down to his office and said, "Why are you asking me for money?" And it wasn't him, of course. It was somebody else who created a very similar email that was sending me a phishing email. So I'll speak briefly this morning on kind of the cause and effect, phishing, and how that leads to ransomware. Ransomware is extremely prevalent. It's extremely common, much more than you think, not just municipalities, but businesses, small, medium businesses, large businesses, corner stores. There really is no bias towards it. We do find that municipalities seem to be some kind of target, especially recently. So I'll kind of jump right into it. The first one, as I said, is going to be phishing. So what is phishing? Phishing is the fraudulent attempt to obtain sensitive information such as usernames, passwords, credit card details by disguising oneself as trustworthy entity or electronic communication. So basically the email that you would have received yesterday that looks like it's from TD, but it's really not, is a perfect example of phishing. All you have to do is click on that link and you might get ransomware. You might have given somebody remote access to your computer, not even known it. Phishing is the number one way to get malware and ransomware onto your network. What can happen? So money extortion is something that we hear a lot about, where you get an email that says, "I have a video of you doing something inappropriate until you pay me X amount of dollars." We hear that one probably 2 or 3 times a week from municipalities very often, as well as everyday users. Leaks of data, different types of confidential information. Malware, ransomware is really what everybody should be worried about. There is new versions of that all the time. We had a client yesterday morning, they got hit with ransomware. It's so incredibly common. Network encryption, as I heard someone mention earlier, where you get completely locked out many times, that has to do with ransomware. Compromised information. So, St. John, New Brunswick is a really good example of this. About a year and a half ago, their server was compromised, and it was the server that had all of the ratepayer credit card information on it, and therefore there was 6,000 credit cards that were sold on the black market version of the internet, the dark web, for the next 2 years. And then, of course, inaccessible files. I'd like everybody to just repeat this very, very calmly to themselves. You cannot be unbreached. Awesome. Oh, I feel like a teacher. One thing that I like people to just remember this is that there is a certain type of comfort that comes with having an IT company that says, well, my IT company has my back. If something happens, they'll take care of it. Or right now, what is very popular is cyber insurance. So you have cyber insurance, which is very beneficial. It's going to pay for new hardware. It's going to pay the ransom if you choose to do that, which we recommend against. But the point of this is that even said and done, you've paid the ransom, you've got new hardware, you have everything back, you've still been breached. Everything that has been breached has still been seen. There's still snapshots that have been taken pictures of. It still can be sold. So, for example, that St. John, New Brunswick, it was actually the parking server that was breached. Yeah, they got everything back, but someone has still fished through all those credit card numbers. So the breach, you cannot be unbreached. It sounds like such a simple thing to say, but at the end of the day, it comes down to the user to make those decisions that get to malware and whatnot. So even if we take care of you, you've still been breached. I hope that rant made sense, everybody. So Burlington, Ontario, you may or may not have heard, were hit with ransomware. A staff member received a legitimate looking email, probably similar to the TD one, posing as someone involved with business in their city. The sender requests a change to certain banking information. This is actually also what happened with Grant McEwen. That staff member says, well, this sounds like a pretty routine request, so I'm going to change their account information. And then all of a sudden, a next payment of $503,000 goes to that sender. It takes a week for anybody to even realize that this happened, and they're out $500,000. So in total, this probably was an 8-minute mistake. Somebody just says, oh, this looks normal. They may even have forwarded it to somebody else, and that person said, oh, this looks normal. And then they're out $500,000. And obviously, when money's been sent, it's not easy to always get right back. Phishing emails are designed to look legitimate. So how can you recognize them? Generally, that they look like their bills or invoices. They look like they're refunds. One that I get all the time to my personal account is the Amazon refund. It looks like Amazon's trying to refund you for something. And the first thing that comes to anybody's head is, oh, I like free money. So of course I'm going to click this link to get money. Of course, that's going to be a phishing email. A declined payment, something like from your bank that says we need you to re-enter your password. One that is really disheartening to hear people get is the email delivery failure, because I think everybody has sent out an email and they probably hit the wrong letter and you get the bounce back. Well, if you just send a normal email, if I'm emailing Doug and I get the bounce back and all of a sudden I think, oh, I must have spelled Doug wrong, you're going to click that link just thinking it's legitimate. The scanned document one, we get a lot from FedEx or from Purelator that says, oh, you need to click this link, you're having a delivery, which, of course, like I said, package delivery. So how to spot these? There's always a sense of urgency in some way. The email address and the sender name don't necessarily match. A good way to do that is, like was said earlier, hover your cursor over the email. So if it says it's from John Harmon, but you hover your mouse over the email and it's a bunch of random letters and numbers, of course, that's probably not from me. Bad grammar, sentence structure. A lot of times, because these threats come from overseas, they just use Google Translate. So they think that it looks really good, but they're missing parts and, everything from a period to extra letters. And then just random or suspicious attachments. If I'm asking you just an everyday question, there's probably no need for me to send you a random attachment. So here's just a really good example of a phishing email that Dave here received. So if you look at the top there, first of all, Dave has no business with a telecom company in Australia. Pardon me, he sees that there's an order number. So if he hovered over that, it references a Google document, not any type of attachment. It says it's from Airdrie, Alberta. Well, if you look a little bit lower, it says that the carrier is Karen's Transport. So Dave did probably more research than most people. Karen Transport does not have a facility in Airdrie. There's a couple things that to look at this really quickly, you think, oh, this is legitimate. But if you just take that extra 10 seconds and take your hand off the mouse and just think, okay, does this all add up? This is another one that Dave recently got. This is the whole, free money sounds good until it's not. So Dave received this and, somebody's randomly sending him $3,000 for no reason at all. And it sounds like it's too good to be true. It probably is. The effect of phishing many times right now is ransomware. So ransomware is a type of malicious software or malware designed to deny access to a computer system or data until a ransom is paid. Midland, Ontario is a really good example of this. Last year, we've used this example a lot, but it's really a cut and dry example of how this happens. So the town was hit with ransomware, completely locked out of absolutely everything from financial, payroll, office files. They had no access. Now, here's the downside, is that there were no backups in place at all. So then maybe they had a local one, but they did not back up off-site at all. So what did they end up doing? They paid the ransom because that was the only way they thought they could get their information back. Now, one thing that the RCMP advises is to not pay the ransom because there is no guarantee that you will get anything back anyways. There's no hacker code of conduct that says if they pay you, you have to give them their stuff back. This is kind of what happens to your screen. It turns red and it says, oops, you've been encrypted. I didn't include it in this screen capture, but what is very kind of these hackers is they give you a 1-800 number to call and they walk you through how to pay them. So they actually have their own support line. They're very humane. Biggest impacts of ransomware are temporary or permanent loss of data, financial loss, as there's always going to be financial loss, whether it's loss of productivity, loss of files, or you have to just pay ransom. There's always 100 times out of 100 times a financial loss. Breach of confidential information, which I don't think anybody wants to do, especially when it comes to your ratepayers or anything that you're not wanting to be public right now. Major disruption to different types of operations. Harm to reputation is an intangible one, and you will always be known as a municipality that got hit with ransomware. That sounds very unkind to say that, but Grant McEwen is the best example of this. They paid $11.6 million to some hackers in Hong Kong. And then loss of productivity is a big one. You might have to shut everything down for a week or 2 weeks, and then all of a sudden you're 2 weeks behind, and then, of course, damage to internal systems. Couple quick tips is think twice before opening any link or attachment. Review the email address very carefully. Be wary of really unusual requests. I can't stress enough, hover your cursor over every email and attachments. Don't click it. You're going to see the pop-up of who's really sending that to you. And of course, don't open any links or attachments on mobile devices. Now, I say this because a lot of times if you read your email on the run, on your phone, it's because you're not in the office. You can't really spend the time that you needed to. You might be in your car, which is not a good thing anyways, and you haven't given yourself enough time to really investigate a random email. Plus, if you're on your phone and you haven't spent the time investigating and you're on the county Wi-Fi, you can still infect the entire county just because you're on the Wi-Fi. And that's all I have for you today. If there's one other point I could make, and it's probably the most important one, we hear a lot, well, if you guys are looking after us or managing us, why does stuff still get through? At the end of the day, I can go to Gmail, I can come up with my own email address and call it my name, johnharmon@gmail.com, and I can send you a link, and there may be no reason for your security mitigants to block it, because you're just getting a normal email. So that's where the front line of defense truly is the end user, and it's going to be up to you guys to do some investigation. And if it's important, they're always going to email you back. But at the end of the day, if someone is just sending you an email, it's going to get through. It's going to be up to you to not open the link or the attachment.